Welcome to the Millennial Rant, a podcast about whatever's bothering me today. With topics ranging from politics to pop culture, there's a rant to cover everyone. For more Millennial Rant content, you can join me on the web at millennialrant.com.
I've definitely had some unpopular opinions, but I think this one is probably the most unpopular. And it's caused a lot of friction in our society, and it's caused a lot of, back and forth and honestly just straight up hate and vitriol, which is why I'm going to talk about it. So, couple years ago, gosh, I want to say like 3, maybe even 4 years ago, I came across online a video about a Miss something or other America. I think it was Miss America. I don't think it was Mrs. America. I think it was Miss America. The winner of that particular year's pageant did an interview where she was asked about healthcare. And she said, healthcare is not a right. And I was like, what? Somebody in the it crowd who gets it? And then, of course, the next day she backpedaled and apologized and said that's not what she meant. She meant something totally different. She meant that, I don't care what it was that she said. She was right the first time. Healthcare is not a right. It's a commodity. So let's talk about what defines a right. A right is something that you can do for yourself, that you are able to allow other people the opportunity to do for themselves. Life is a right. We all have a right to our own individual lives. Religion is a right. We all have a right to our own different religions and practices and opinions. Being able to protect ourselves is a right. Now, there are different ways that you can infringe on those rights, but I'm not talking about that right now. I'm talking about things that you can do for yourself and then that you can then allocate to a higher entity to do for you. So because people have the right to protect themselves, we therefore have the right to embed that power of protection in a force, like a police force or a fire department or a military, to protect us in our place so we don't have to, because that's when you get in the weeds and laws and all those sorts of things. We still can protect ourselves and we still should protect ourselves, but we have allocated most of that power to an outside entity that is able to do for us what we can do for ourselves, but better or bigger. I guess I should say, not necessarily better. It's the same thing with any other unalienable right, basically, right? What is in the Bill of Rights and whatnot. So there are things that are convenient and necessary in a lot of aspects, like legal services, like healthcare, like whatever you want to throw in there, that they are important to the day-to-day, but they're not rights. Let's talk about legal real quick. When you are processed, right? They read you your Miranda rights. You have a right to an attorney. If you can't afford an attorney, one will be appointed to you. Right. So if you can afford an attorney, you could get a really good attorney. And really good attorneys are really good for a reason. They can get people off that have no business being off. If you can't afford a good attorney, you're going to have to flip the public defender coin and hope that it comes up heads, because nobody is required to quit their 6-figure job in order to become a public defender or even a public prosecutor, although I think more people are more inclined to be public prosecutors. I don't know much about the legal system, okay? But I do know that even though you have the right of representative, you don't necessarily get to choose your representative. And if you can't afford a better representative, there's really no point in crying about it unless that person you can't afford is willing to do it pro bono. which sometimes happens, but you're not entitled to that 6-figure lawyer's aid. You're not. It's the same thing with health. And not just health in general, but healthcare specifically, okay? We have a major healthcare crisis in the United States. And a large part of that is because there are people who are willing to take advantage of the system. And what does that mean? It means that hospitals have been mandated that if somebody comes in, they have to be seen, regardless of whether or not they're going to pay their bill. And so all of these people go in to be treated and then leave the hospital with the bill. And that's not helpful to the people who actually pay their bills. That doesn't, like, what good does that do to the community as a whole? It just racks up the healthcare prices so that more people can't afford healthcare, and so they stiff their bill and the bills go up further and further and further for everybody. It's criminal. And it's not the hospital's fault in a lot of these cases. It's the everyday average American citizen who's willing to not do their part. Are there people who genuinely can't afford healthcare? Yes, absolutely. But there are allowances made for those exceptions. Those should be exceptions, not the rule. There are free clinics, which are, they're like the public defenders of healthcare, right? You go there because you have to, and you flip a coin and hopefully it comes up heads. But that's, not always the case. And there are also, relief programs that are in place to help people. There are health share programs if you can't afford actual health insurance. There are different options besides just not paying your bills. But to get down to this whole idea of healthcare as a right, it's not. You are not entitled to the time and effort and energy that a doctor has put in to getting their education. If you want free healthcare for life, go to medical school or marry somebody who did, or have a brother who went to medical school, or have a brother that married a girl who has a father that has a medical degree. But whatever the case, you're not entitled to the time and effort that somebody has put into their education in order to be able to have a career. And, doctors need to be paid too. And despite popular opinion, most doctors don't actually make that much. If you're, and a lot of the ones who do want to make money, they go into a specialized field, something like neurosurgery or cancer research, or like they specialize on something that is needed, but isn't maybe necessarily needed as much as something else, like, general practice. Everybody needs a general practice doctor. Not everybody needs a neurosurgeon. So, you have to be neurologist. That's what I keep thinking. Neurologist, not necessarily a neurosurgeon, although they do have those, but I was specifically thinking of neurologist. I guess a neurosurgeon would be even more specialized than just a neurologist. Regardless, if you want those services, you're going to have to pay for them. And that's where, this whole idea of healthcare reform comes in, which is another thing. People are all up in arms about this idea that, health insurance is a scam. Well, health insurance isn't owed to you either. It's also not a right. It's a perk. That's how it started. It was a perk to get people to choose one job over another job. And with the whole capitalist society, businesses started, trying to one-up each other on how much more they could offer their employees, and now it's just expected. Well, if they're not going to give me benefits, I'm not going to take that job. Well, then don't take that job. Somebody else needs it, I'm sure. Something that I would really like to see is some accountability among the people who are getting healthcare services, where they realize that they're responsible for taking care of themselves. And yeah, you know what? The right to life is a right. But that doesn't mean that you can just take whatever you need to extend your life. what this comes down to is that you need to be aware that you are responsible for your own life and your own decisions. Because, yeah, everyone has the right to life, but you don't have the right to somebody else's life. You don't have the right to somebody else's time or talents or efforts or job. You don't have the right to that. We don't live in a world where you're allowed to force somebody to be your personal whatever. If you want a personal chef, you have to hire a personal chef. If you want a personal housekeeper, you have to hire a personal housekeeper. If you want a personal doctor, you should have to hire a personal doctor. And if you are going to a general practice to see a general practitioner, you are hiring a personal doctor. So that's my 2 cents. Take it or leave it. This is one of those hills I'm willing to die on. You know, if I have an issue, and I've done what I can to take care of myself. And it means that I don't go to the doctor as often as maybe I would otherwise. But I've also come to realize that I don't necessarily need to go to the doctor as often as I have been. So maybe there's that too. Maybe the whole healthcare market wouldn't be so oversaturated if people didn't have health insurance that they could cap out and then just keep using. I don't know. I'm not, as I always say, I'm not an expert on anything. But I do have my opinion. And I am fortunate enough to live in a country that recognizes that I have the right to my opinion, whether you agree with it or not.